I think we'll go ahead and begin. I think there'll be a couple of others that may be joining us. And what I'd like to do is just do quick introductions. We have a new site joining us today, Mission New York, out of Harlem, New York, and we're glad they're a part of us. And so I'm just going to ask you to tell us your name and your organization or the community that you're coming from and working in. And so, Daryl, I'm going to start with you. Unmute.
Hi, everybody. I'm Cheryl Valley. I'm the executive director of the Center for Community Justice in Schenectady, New York. And just delighted to work with James and Jim and Colleen. And we've got some things thrown in the mixer, and we're trying to see what's going to come out of the mixer that we're going to jump on, but we're jumping on something here. We think with the Schenectady School District, which has a very high truancy rate, very alarming. So we're working on it.
Great. Thanks, Cheryl. Daryl Jones, if you'd introduce yourself. You may be muted. All right. Amory, why don't you introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm Amory Russell, and I'm located in Auburn, Washington. I'm part of the Act Now staff. I oversee logistics. Welcome, everybody. So good to see your faces.
Thank you, Amory. Okay, Tanner.
Hi, everybody. My name's Tanner. I live in Utah, but I'm coming in from Houston today. I'm on a big trip across the country with my kiddos for a homeschooling trip. I'm part of the Act Now team, and I kind of manage Circle platform and do a bunch of the IT stuff. Welcome.
Okay. Carlos.
Oh, good morning, everyone. I'm Carlos. I'm joining you today from California. I'm here with the QSide team.
Okay, thank you. Jay.
Hello, I'm Jay Sundberg, and we live in Manhattan. We live in East Harlem in Manhattan, and we're excited to be here.
Good. Tiana.
Yep, I'll echo what Jay said. We are very excited about this, about learning from Act Now and being part of this community.
Good. Lexi.
My name is Lexi Sundberg. I'm also located in Manhattan, and I am one of Act Now staff member. I'm an Act Now staff member, and I do research and storytelling.
Okay, thank you. Shelley.
Hi, I'm Shelley Henson. I'm in St. George, Utah right now. I'm on the Act Now team, and I am here to support you when it comes to impact and theory of change. I also support learning strategy and communications, I guess is a good way to say.
Okay. John.
Hey, everybody, coming from Oklahoma City, where I work with the Oklahoma Justice Circle.
Okay. Tyrone.
Hi, my name is Tyrone. I'm also zooming in from California today, and I'm part of the QSide team as well.
Great. Michael George.
Hey, everybody, I'm Michael George. I'm with Pacific Institute for Research and Evaluation. I'm assigned to the center outside of Washington, D.C., but I live and most of my projects are in South Carolina.
Okay, great. Carol Jones.
Good afternoon, everybody. I am the Deputy Director of Act Now, and I do whatever Jim doesn't want to do.
Thank you. Mary Gordon.
Good afternoon. My name is Mary Gordon. I'm with Pacific Institute for Research and Evaluation, located in the Maryland, D.C. area. Couple of connections. I'm originally from Brooklyn, New York, but I'm also have family in Houston, going to be there Thanksgiving. Great birding in Houston, Tanner.
Mm-hmm. B's phone. I'm not sure who B's phone is, but B's phone? Okay. Kimberly Jones.
Hi, I'm Kimberly. I work for the Washtenaw County Sheriff's Office. I do diversity, equity, and inclusion work. I came through to this through Derek Jackson and our work with the Community Violence Intervention Team. And we actually just started a 501c4, to which I got the joy or pain of being nominated president. So I'll be the president of the newly created Stopping Acts of Violence for Everyone Commission in Washtenaw County.
Great, Kimberly. Thanks. Erica Fogarty.
Hi, I'm Erica Fogarty. I'm based in Portland, Oregon, and I am with the organization that I founded with my husband, Justin Fogarty, called Talk a Mile. Justin is usually our day-to-day here and joins, but he actually has a call with a school district, so I am filling in, but great to see everyone.
Great. Shaheem?
Let them know they're on mute.
I don't think they are on mute. Shaheem?
Hey, I'm sorry. I was having a little technical difficulties. Can you hear me?
Yes.
My name is Shaheem Smith. I'm from New York. I'm currently with DCJS's SNUG program. I came across this webinar through a presentation you guys did up at our annual Give Trust building meeting up in Oriskany, New York. So I'm happy to be here. Happy to learn, figure out what's going on.
Good. Glad you're a part of this. Thank you, Shane. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Colleen, introduce yourself.
Sure. Colleen Koppel, I'm the coordinator for our community of practice and have been with ACT Now from the beginning and are so excited to have our new sites joining us.
Okay. Tanner, have I missed anybody? I think we're good.
I think you're good.
All right. So just a couple of updates, and then we want to spend some time talking about belonging, well-being, meaning, and purpose, which is becoming an important theme with Walmart and plus in the whole opportunity youth development space. And plus, as I've discovered, it's becoming a major theme in corporations as well as other foundations, and I'll talk about that in just a few moments. But as I talk about that and kind of go through some logistics, I also want you to be thinking, because I want this to be an interactive discussion when we get into those four topics, or those four pillars. The first question I want you to think about is, I want each of you to think about an experience where you have felt belonging, where you felt you were included. And we'll have that as part of our discussion when we go through the presentation. So be thinking about that. And I'll ask you to take about 30 seconds to describe that experience and what it meant to you. As often happens in my life, things kind of cruise along and then all of a sudden they become very intense. And then they cruise along and they become very intense. We're actually in an exciting moment right now. And it kind of came to a head yesterday. John Bridgeland, who is the co-founder of ACT Now and was the former chief domestic policy advisor for President Bush and is the executive director of the Office of American Possibilities, which is our bridge to the Rockefeller Philanthropy and Rockefeller Foundation. We had a meeting yesterday with the McChrystal Group, specifically retired General Stanley McChrystal and the McChrystal Group, and they are very intrigued by what we're doing in ACT Now, and we're very intrigued by what's going on in Martin County, Kentucky, with our work, particularly on fentanyl and OxyContin and the whole issue in that part. In fact, the Martin County Thrive program, which is part of ACT Now, have received $500,000 from the Appalachian Regional Commission and another $500,000 in the opioid settlement money. And they're focusing on social determinants of health, which raised an interesting discussion yesterday. To what extent does youth deflection is it influenced by the social determinants of health, which are things like work, education, worship, the whole environment in which an individual lives and functions, and how those variables contribute to at-risk behavior. And we're now in active discussion with 4 additional foundations. And I just want to give this group a heads up. And you know, Koppel rule number 1, I never promise money until I see it. And but we are in a good place right now with the MacArthur Foundation, the Wellbeing Foundation, which Erica, you may know them. They're based out of Oregon, and Open Society, which is an interesting potential partner that will be interesting to see Walmart and Open Society working together on this project. But there's what they're looking to do and wanting to help support out of the MacArthur group, excuse me, McChrystal group, is looking at our individual sites. And so funding that would come to us through the partnerships that they're going to help broker would be a site specific project. So for example, it could be Schenectady, New York, where you're focusing on youth deflection and possibly a collaboration with the school district on truancy. They were very interested in the SBIRT program, the Screening, Brief Intervention, and Referral to Treatment Initiative, and see that they are looking at ways in which to support that in funding. And so the site would participate. In fact, the site itself would probably make the application. We would help you write the application, but it would be site-driven and site-based. And we'll have more information on that within the next couple of weeks. But there are guidelines to that in terms of how you participate in the overall Act Now project and the overall Act Now initiative. And it also respects the individual strategies that the sites are doing, where Oklahoma City may be doing one strategy, East Harlem may be doing another strategy. That's okay, as long as we are looking at youth deflection or some kind of deflection and looking at the social determinants of health as in our strategy. Again, around and what's important for Walmart is that their next round of funding beginning in the next year, as we learned at the Opportunity Youth Forum in Aspen a couple of weeks ago, is that they're focusing on workforce development, and they consider employment to be a critical piece as a social determinant in influencing health. So just wanted to give you a heads up on that. And as the criteria surfaces and we develop the applications, we'll let you know and keep you apprised. But it's good news in terms of the long-term support of the sites. And it gets us, because our goal in our Walmart funding was to add 10 additional sites. And at this point, we've added 3 additional sites. And so funding will be coming forward out of those sites, for those sites in 2025. And as we put these partnerships together. But I'm really excited about what the potential holds for this collaboration.
Jim, may I make a comment? You know, I'm the new kid on the block here, but I'm not new in Schenectady. I've been here since 1998. And while I think I'm somewhat of a known commodity, it really, I have to say, having Jim and Colleen involved I wish I could say it was all me that was able to sort of get all of the attention from the school district. I was able to open the door, but Jim and Colleen filled the room. So I just have to say that. Not that there are any naysayers on this call, but it really is about the people and the message as well. And I think Jim and Colleen, the district was so impressed with you. So thank you.
Well, thank you, Cheryl, and your grant is approved. No, you're very kind. So, but anyway, that's just some of the background. And I mean, I know we've had you jumping through some hoops. We've had you involved in the circle communication strategy. But part of what we laid out with the McChrystal group yesterday, because they want us to really focus heavily on Eastern Kentucky and the fentanyl opioid crisis and its impact on youth. And they're wanting to hire Act Now and to generate resources that could be put into play to make this an Eastern Regional Appalachian initiative, which would be eventually 13 states that comprise Appalachia. And so, I mean, if you've not read Stanley McChrystal's book, Team of Teams, I encourage you to read it. It's based on a JSOC model, a Joint Special Operations Command strategy, where you bring diverse groups and coalitions together to attack a particular problem. And so Bridgeland has articulated what it is we do and what our goals are in this project. And so they're looking at that as a potential initiative. Then once we got into the conversation, they want to see this look at all of our Act Now sites, not just Appalachia. Appalachia started the conversation, but it goes much bigger and further than that. So wanted to give you that background, and I'll be talking and setting up calls with the individual sites to have a one-on-one conversation with you about what it is you might want to do. I know East Harlem is focused on immigration and the conversation that can take place around in East Harlem. They're just beginning their listening sessions and their conversations, and are going to be a part of this. If you've not figured it out, Lexi, who has been on these calls, is the daughter of Jay and Tiana, and in that process. So we're glad to have them on board. But there's a real opportunity with the McChrystal group on this kind of collaboration and support with foundations. So I want to talk at Opportunity Youth Forum in Aspen a couple of weeks ago. Major discussions around belonging, well-being, meaning, and purpose. And as I listened to the presentations, my initial response, as I've been listening and participating in conversations around belonging, and what Walmart's new emphasis is on creating communities of belonging and being sure that the environments are conducive to belonging, just what does belonging mean? And what does it imply? I know generally at a 50,000 foot level, but I also have had to think about it, especially coming out of the Aspen experience and also in conversations with Walmart, where they're changing their entire corporate culture that will focus on concepts of belonging and purpose and meaning and well-being. And that the Act Now site is a major initiative for them in terms of it operationalizing it. I was disappointed that they are changing their focus to workforce development, but now looking at it through the lens of, again, the social determinants of health that influence behavior and put people at risk, the workforce piece can make sense. And it also, from Walmart's perspective, because a lot of the grantees, the Walmart grantees at the Aspen Forum were discouraged by this news that they were moving away from criminal justice conversations or themes and moving more into the concept of workforce development and getting youth employed. As you know, Walmart has about 450,000 young people between the ages of, 18 and 25 that are employed at Walmart. They're the largest youth employer, single youth employer in the country. And so it's all about making money for Walmart. But their purpose is, how do we keep people employed and what can we do? I mean, they're offering college scholarships, they're doing a lot of incentives. And so we're kind of organizing ourselves to be able to meet the demand of what can happen in local communities and at the same time generate the resources. And it also allows us in this conversation to have each site doing its own thing, as long as it looks like it's youth deflection and reflecting what we're doing in that space. And so I wanted to get more specifically specific on what it means when we use the terms belonging, well-being, meaning, and purpose, and to move a little bit away from the 50,000 foot level. And so as we go through the presentation, I want you to be thinking about that experience that you've had where you felt belonging. And then the other thing is, what is it your organization could actually do and to actualize belonging, meaning, well-purpose, and well-being, well-being, meaning, and purpose. I'll get it out. Be thinking about that. Tanner, if you'll pull up the slides for me, please. Next slide. So just a reminder, our mission is Act Now sites create beloved communities where everyone feels safe and can thrive. If you remember Act Now 1.0, those of you who are part of the pilot sites, we were focusing on dialogue with law enforcement and criminal justice reform, and that we started off mobilizing in 6 communities. It's transitioned to youth deflection, keeping young people out of the criminal justice system. And so we've modified our mission to be sites where we create beloved communities where everyone feels safe and can thrive. Our vision is that we see an America where everyone can thrive, with youth leading the way. Through youth-driven efforts, Act Now transforms neighborhoods into safe, nurturing places that empower everyone, especially young people, to realize their full potential. Both with our current funding and our new funding that could be coming, is that we want to really focus on youth participation. So as we're designing programs and engaging in programs, we want youth at the table, and we want it to be data-driven. QSite is helping us collect that data and looking at ways to identify local data sources. And if you've not already heard from QSite on that space, you will be hearing from them. But that's our mission and our vision. Next, please. So let's make belonging, meaning, well-being, and purpose and action in our communities, or actionable in our communities. And so, Tanner, I want to kind of go through a roll call and just ask people to give us 30 seconds. So take the slides off for a minute, if you would, and kind of describe an experience where you have felt belonging. And then we'll kind of go through some of the definitions and the work of it, but where you basically your understanding of belonging. And Tiana, I'm going to pick on you first. So,
Yikes! A new kid on the block.
right.
Well, the first one that I thought about was a couple of summers ago. We come out of an Eastern European context. So we had a group of Albanians who we've worked with for years, actually decades. And they were actually in the States for a big meeting, and we were there with them. And I remember them, I walked in on them talking in the hotel lobby, and I was interrupting their conversation, which was happening in Albanian. And I kind of stepped back, and they said, no, you come, you're part of us. You're family, you're part of us, you're one of us, you're Albanian too, which is actually not true. I don't speak Albanian, and I wasn't born in Albania, but I think that felt desire that people wanted me and that I was included and that my voice mattered, right? So they changed to English and they included me into their circle and acknowledged that I was part of them. And that was very, very meaningful to me.
Yeah.
At an emotional level.
Yeah. Good example. John Middendorf.
Yeah, not too long ago, a mentor of mine passed away. His name was Dr. John A. Reed, and he was sort of the elder statesman amongst all of the Black pastors in the area, and the family was very protective of the people who would come and see him in his last hours, and I was humbled to be included in that list that included really mostly family, just to be able to go see Dr. Reed there at the end, and that's the first thing that kind of came to mind.
Yeah, good. Amory.
I can think of a couple, but one that stands out to me just last night, I had an hour and a half conversation with a sweet friend of mine that was on staff with us at our church that we retired from. Her husband passed away this last May. And when we were talking, there's like 25 years difference in us, right? And I thought, she's going to end this. We need to be out of this conversation. I said, I really should go. She said, no, Amory, I love talking to you. We should live closer. You are dear to me. And I felt valued. I felt worth in that. It was good.
Okay, good. All right. Colleen.
So I'm coming at it more from creating belonging, opportunities for belonging. And I just think back to the neighborhood that I raised my kids in was very diverse. Kids came from 50 different countries and spoke 35 different languages. And the thing that we tried to do just on the block where we lived was have neighborhood activity nights where everybody would come, no matter what language they spoke, and they could participate, especially immigrant and refugee families whose parents were not English speaking, a way for them to feel part of the community. That just, to me, created that sense of they were welcomed and included.
Thank you. Kimberly Jones.
Well, I'll say this. I've been experiencing a lot of anxiety in attempting to answer this question. And since I do diversity, equity, and inclusion work, I'm involved in creating spaces where other people feel like they belong. But I have to say, I don't feel like I belong actually anywhere. And I haven't ever felt that feeling. So I can't answer the question.
That's interesting, Kimberly. We're going to work to make you feel belonging here and celebrate what you do, because you do important stuff. Shelley.
This last weekend, I had some friends come stay with me, and I'm an artist, and I'm always playing with clay, and they wanted to play too, so they wanted to like participate in the activity I was participating in, and that was just, there was something about all of us sitting around together, playing with clay, listening to music that just felt really connected, and it felt really nice.
Good. Tanner?
I was just thinking so many examples, but the one that really stands out to me right now is we were on a cruise a couple weeks ago, and the workers from the cruise, we had one of our servers was from the Philippines and another from India, and they served our meals every night, and they knew us so well by the second day, and I recognize that this is their work, but they did it with such a full heart, with such a desire to serve, that my kids, like every single one of them, felt very seen. Like these individuals knew them so well and cared so much that our meal was presented well, and I just felt incredibly seen.
Good.
And even our kids, even our baby, there was conversations, they would get down on his level and sit and chat with him, and just above and beyond what was required.
Cool. Jay.
Yeah, I would say, one of the things we did in our previous job was we welcomed Ukrainian women and children at the Polish-Ukrainian border, and that was such a moving time. And Lexi, our daughter, was our on-ground coordinator there, but Tiana and I were in and out as much as we could. But I remember one specific time when we went to the actual border, and we welcomed some people that we knew right as they stepped out of the war zone of Ukraine and into the peace zone of Poland. And they just hugged us, and they said, okay, now we feel safe. And said things like, when we're in Kyiv, we don't cry, but now we can cry. And they started crying about all the trauma and all the loss that they had experienced. And just to be with them and experience those moments, and for them to include us in those moments, felt something like family, something like that.
Good example. Carlos.
So with Thanksgiving approaching, I'm originally from El Salvador, so I had never celebrated Thanksgiving or anything like that. And I remember back in university, it was always a weird time of the year because everyone else would go back home, and there would only be a couple of us left on campus doing nothing. It seemed like it was this time of where everyone was happy, everyone was with family, but I always felt lonely until actually one faculty member invited me and a couple other international students to their house. And I remember his words. He was like, I had to spend one Thanksgiving by myself, and I promised I would do my best to help anyone that's in that situation. And that meant so much to me, like someone welcoming me into their house and just enjoying this experience together. It was really impactful and something I hope I can do someday for someone else.
Great. Cheryl.
Gave me time to think about some examples, and I came up with a couple, but most recently, before this meeting, I was on the call with some of my fellow sports committee members. My granddaughter graduated last year, 8th grade, from a very small urban Catholic school. And so I'm pretty involved in her life, and I was asked to be on the sports committee. I'm the treasurer. And what we're doing is we're combining sports with 2 Catholic schools, very small, very urban. And one of the schools would not have been able to participate, the kids, in sports because they just didn't have the resources, etc. And so we raise money, we do a lot of fundraising. And so we've been able to merge those 2 programs. So now kids from both schools are under one umbrella and everybody gets to play. And so I just feel like, I'm the grandmother and you've got these parents of kids who are actually there, and they just welcome me with open arms. And we cleaned the gym this past Saturday, scraping gum off the bleachers. But I just felt like, it was almost fun to be able to be with all of these folks, and we're there for the same purpose.
It's great. Great. Justin.
Yeah. Well, first of all, Kimberly, I hear you. I can relate to that a bit. Feeling a little bit fish out of water, no matter what the water is like. However, I guess in Portland, one thing that comes to mind is there's a coffee shop here that's downtown that's just done kind of an amazing job over the last couple of years of building out a running group. So every Tuesday night at 7, rain, shine, ice, sleet, snow, whatever, it turnout these days is probably somewhere between 50 and 100 people. There's different groups too. So some folks just want to walk and it's a shorter one that they do. And then other folks that go a little bit further. But what I love about it though is kind of what I've always loved about running is that when you run with people, whether you know them well or you don't, conversation kind of flows pretty easy and goes pretty deep. So it's oftentimes just a really good way to connect with people, people that you thought you knew and people that you just hadn't met yet. So I've appreciated those opportunities.
Good. Mary Gordon.
Unmute. Yeah, I too can kind of relate to Kim and I think it was Justin because I went far back. I'm a senior and I went to when I was like 10 or 11. And I lived in Brooklyn, New York, an inner city place, and the kids would all just play together. When there was a new kid, they would just know where everybody was and they would just run there and play. We never even asked, where they were from, what they did. Whereas now, when I think, new groups, the first thing people ask you is, where are you from? What do you do? But when you were 10 or 12, I mean, it was really about belonging because people just wanted to play with you, and you became that group, that, met the same place, went home for dinner and came back, and everyone, belonged.
Good. Daryl Jones. Are you there, Daryl? Okay, Michael George.
Well, this is interesting because few years ago, I'm from law enforcement, and I went through a class and that talked about Myers-Briggs temperament indicator. And I took the little test that they had, and I came to understand that I'm a part of my temperament is such that not feeling like I belong is a common theme. So what I've done is pursue being a part. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But most recently, how that has worked because I'm an evaluator on a few of the county level projects here in South Carolina. One of the ones in particular has a lot of young people. I'm an old person, and the fact that I'm an evaluator, I didn't always feel a part of that, but what ended up happening, they had their annual banquet where they recognize members of the coalition. Now, this coalition has 50, probably 60 people, and they ended up giving me, be honest, I can't remember exactly what they called it, but it was a community award. So the end result of that, besides felt good about getting that, but it also helped me understand that even though these are young people that are working in this community, and by young people, I'm talking about 20s and 30s, they recognize that I was a part of the team, and that was one of the times that I felt like I belonged.
Good, thank you. Tyrone.
Yeah, hi. I was just thinking about it as everyone was giving their great answers, and it's just kind of interesting because I feel like as I've gotten older, my sense of belonging has shifted from more place-based things to really people. As I sort of have gone to all these different places, and as I've sort of moved out, my childhood home, and I'm now living with my partner in a new place. It's really interesting because I think my sense of belonging really isn't tied to like a city or a state. It's really tied to, my, girlfriend who I live with, or my neighbors now who I interact with regularly and get to know the longer I'm here. And those are really the things I think of now when I think of belonging.
Good. All right. Lexi.
Yeah, I recently started going to a new church here in New York City, and they have been incredibly welcoming and made me feel like I belong there, both like in the congregation itself and the pastoral team, but also just the people love me already. So that made me feel like I belong.
Good. All right. Shaheem.
Hey, for me, I would say, when I started working the job that I work now, with gun violence prevention in New York, which I started about 4 years now, just working with other people, that aren't just coming in for a paycheck. We're coming in doing something that we're passionate about, something that, is giving back to our community, and the community that we once took away from. And, just the camaraderie that we have with each other from all coming from the same place, experience pretty much the same upbringing, and just being that person that we wish we had, being that person that I wish I had growing up.
Yep. Okay, thank you. Daryl?
Hey, Jim, when you called on me, I happened to be in an elevator, so sorry about that. Yeah, I gave a lot of thought to the question, and I think the best sense of belonging I ever get is when the Kellogg Fellows get together for a reunion. doesn't matter how long it's been since we've seen one another. It could be years, literally. But when we get together, there's a great sense of belonging.
Okay, great. Kyle.
Well, I think generally, when I think of belonging, I think of the cultural festivals that we have staged, generally 1 or 2 a year, where we bring and host various faith traditions or cultural traditions, and for dancing or art or for some of the other some other elements of culture, and it's always particularly warm, particularly welcoming and belonging. So that's where I have felt it most intently.
I think my one example, or one of my examples of belonging, is we did a major gun project with the Navajo Nation some years ago, and traveled to Arizona probably a dozen times, working on ways in which to deal with gun violence on the reservation. And at the end of the project, they had a major celebration event and affirming one another. And I kind of stood outside, being the white guy, and they brought me into the circle, gave me a blanket and a pipe, and declared that I was one of them. And that was a huge moment of feeling like I belonged. I'm not sure who B's phone is, but
I think that's Bernice. Bernice, is that you?
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Tanner, can you unmute her?
Hi there. I think I just successfully did it. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, I've been trying since we've been on. Oh my goodness. Thank you, everyone. I appreciate being with you. And I did not get to introduce myself. My name's Bernice Willis, and I'm part of the Justice Circle at the Nashville, Tennessee site.
Great.
And in terms of participating in the comments about feeling a sense of belonging, similar to what someone just said a moment ago, moving here to Nashville, my husband and I joined a local church here, and we felt as though they treated us as if we grew up here, that we've been in the church forever. And we truly appreciated their outreach, their love, they were truly sincere about their Christianity and reaching out to us. And we just really felt appreciated, and we felt like we had been a part of this congregation our entire lives.
Good. All right. Justin, I think Erica, did she sign off? She may have. I don't see
Yeah,
her.
I think she had to drop.
Yeah, okay. All right, Tanner, if you could bring the slides back up. These are great examples of how you've experienced or felt belonging, and how we turn it into action. Next slide, please. So actually, out of the book, Team of Teams, the McChrystal Group, businesses seek smart scale. People crave belonging and meaning, yet most organizations fail to connect business goals with universal human needs, which ultimately hinders their success. And this is not just about businesses, not just about the military, given McChrystal's background, but it's also about organizations. Half of their portfolio is working with nonprofits. And so, and this really is an opportunity for us to create the environment around which belonging can take place. Next slide, please. So belonging really takes place in 3 different spaces. One is context. That is the environment you live, work, or play. It can be school, workplace, family, and organizational, where you have the opportunity to experience these 4 pillars. Is understanding the context in which you're working. Some of you will be working in schools. Some of you are going to be working with immigrants. Some of you are going to be working in the workplace. Some of you working with drug treatment programs. But whatever that might be, context is important, and to understand that context. The second thing is relationships. The relationships you create, you forge, or develop in the context you are living. relationships that inspire and make you whole. It is about creating those relationships and understanding. And a backdrop of belonging in these 4 pillars we've practiced in the Act Now site, and it was reinforced with the Opportunity Youth Forum, was listening sessions. That conversations really need to begin with us listening in that process. And so creating and forging relationships. I, believe it or not, I'm an introvert, and it is challenging for me in different circles in different places to really start a conversation or to build relationships. I have to put my game face on, but once I'm into them, I don't want to leave them. And so relationships are really important. Then the third is experience. Experience fuels belonging, meaning, well-being, and purpose. We encounter them in tasks, various contexts, and it's ultimately what we do that encourage BMWP. Some of you are describing your various experiences where you had belonging experiences. I mean, I was struck by Jay's talking about being on the border between Poland and Ukraine and people coming across the border and feeling welcomed, feeling accepted, and being a part of that conversation. Being sensitive to what those experiences can bring to you and understanding these 4 pillars. Next slide, please. So elements of belonging, it's a sense of connection to a community, family, or nature, the feeling of love, kindness, and respect from others. Belonging is a fundamental human need. A lack of belonging can have negative effects on people, where you're feeling as an outsider. Definition of structural belonging, which speaks to our organization, is it means having a meaningful voice and the opportunity to participate in the design of political, social, and cultural structures that shape one's life, the right to both contribute and make demands upon society and political institutions. One of the things that have influenced our work, particularly with youth over the years, and which also was a major influence and one of the reasons we created Act Now with a focus on youth and youth engagement, was the University of Minnesota facilitator conducted a 20-year longitudinal study that focused on resiliency, what prevents young people from teenage pregnancy, youth crime and violence, any at-risk substance use, any risky behavior. And they discovered these 5 elements. If a young person has hope, something that brings them into the future, or faith that brings them into the future. The second is if they have acquired skills, something they can celebrate. It could be sports, it could be music, it could be academics. If they have significant adults in their lives, somebody that they can turn to. It can be a grandparent, it could be a coach, it could be a teacher. The other is a locus of control, where they have a voice and are able to participate in the conversation and in the design. And then fifth, if they have an opportunity to give back, altruism, something that they contribute. Those 5 resiliences, if they exist, young people are less involved in violence, substance use, crime, teenage pregnancy, etc. So the structure, the organizations that we creating that environment, particularly where young people can have that voice and participate, are extremely important in this process of belonging, and people feel accepted and welcomed for their experience and their ideas and their thinking. Next slide, please. So structural belonging holds a radically inclusive vision because it requires mutual power, access, and community. Feeling welcomed, feeling heard, feeling affirmed. And I want to underscore the radically inclusive vision because so much of what happens in our groups or our organizations or even our relationships, it becomes about power and how power is used or exercised. Giving people that sense of being welcomed into the process, they're being heard, and that they're being affirmed for their positions or their ideas. You may not agree with everything they say, but they're affirmed for at least expressing them. So a question to you is, how can you apply these principles, especially on the concept of belonging, to your initiatives? Open it up. Would just Tanner remove the slide? Feel free to raise your hand or just jump in. How do you feel like this happens in your organizations? Any thoughts?
I can say could I say that I'm on the opioid settlement fund committee for the county, and we were trying to figure out what do we want to do with this money. And so we decided to do focus groups. And we did focus groups with community members impacted by opioid use and substance use in general. But I said, well, we should interview the people in jail. We should interview the youth in juvenile detention. And when we went to the juvenile detention center, one of the things that struck me the most was the kids said, thank you so much for coming and asking us. And no one ever asks us what we think, what we want, how we feel. And that situation was so impactful on one of the kids. We go every week and do a class. I'm doing a class with one of the pastors. And like some kind of light went off in him. And every time I come back, he's so bright. He's got plans and things he wants to do when he gets out and how he wants to serve other people. So I think he felt really seen, even in a space that isn't, he's in juvenile detention. It's not a super fun space, but he's seeing this as an opportunity to use the time to learn and grow so that when he leaves, he shows up different in the community. So for me, that was really awesome.
And it sounds like you're learning from him as well, in that process.
I mean, I think, we want to know what they think, like why, what is missing, what could we do better, what programs don't exist, what programs exist that aren't really serving in the way they should. And they gave us really great feedback for what they were looking for, what they thought we should or shouldn't do. But I think that when we talk about belonging, him feeling like, I do belong to a community and my voice matters. That for me was just so striking, in the personality change that it created within him.
It's a good example.
Mm-hmm.
Any others?
This is Bernice Willis. I just wanted to briefly share. Last night in our Inspire program, where we have middle schoolers and high schoolers that we are working with, we had as guests last night our Men of Valor. And Men of Valor is actually a group of men that they were recently incarcerated and have changed their lives. And we had them as our presenters to share their journey with our students last night. One of the things that I had asked the students to discuss with their mentors in their groups was to share with us how teens actually fall prey to drugs and crime and all the other nuances of the world. But the things that really surfaced that they shared was wanting to fit in, peer pressure, and not having someone in their life. But what was amazing was that they were so appreciative of the program and just having the opportunity of being heard and feeling seen. Those were their words from last night, and that made us feel good, but it also let us know that we still have a lot of work to do. But I think it's a real good start. So I just wanted to share that.
That's a good one, Bernice. Who
Hey,
else?
Jim, this is Kyle.
Yeah,
Hey,
Kyle.
you might enjoy, a group might enjoy hearing a little bit about what we're planning at Thanksgiving Square. You and Colleen and several of the others have been to the square and realized that we have a place of welcoming and belonging. And that's really, as we are working towards or rejuvenating the square, that's the theme that we are working around. And I've told our architects at Gensler that that's the main goal of the design work, is to create a place where that just feels different, separate from the look of the place. It has to feel like a place of welcome and belonging, and it has to be the design challenge I've given them is that when you step off the curb into the Thanksgiving district, the sun has to come from behind the clouds and the birds have to start chirping, and your heart, your blood pressure goes down 10 points, and somebody runs across the street and hugs you. And we've been struggling with what it is and how do we demonstrate that physically in the square. And I'm going to share with you if I can here. Can y'all see my screen?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So the Thanksgiving Cultural District, we've gotten with local artists to try to design 3 oversized statues, each of these is 30 feet tall, and trying to create that image in our or create that mood, that feel that we're trying to accomplish through the that we're talking about with the sun coming out from behind the clouds and the like. And so that's just a kind of a first approach at trying to figure out how do we create a place of welcome and belonging. And we've got some architects and artists working on that to help us do that, but I thought you might enjoy seeing what that looks like.
That's great, Kyle. That's really cool. And what a great place for it. That is a fascinating place, Thanksgiving Square in Dallas. If you're ever there, go there and see it. Anybody else?
Let me share real quick. I was thinking about our conference that we went to with some of these Act Now sites in May, and thinking about Aisha and the group that came from Chicago. She brought 2 youth with her, and a big part of their programming is around giving youth the opportunity to lead and bring about the change in their own community. And I spent a good amount of time with these 2 youth and was so inspired by they originally in that community didn't feel like, nobody felt like they belonged at all. And it went completely to the other end of the spectrum, where they had not just been embraced and loved and seen, but they had been trusted with the ability to be leaders and to actually figure out what needed to happen in their community, which I think kind of took this to a whole nother level, where they had ownership of creating belonging in their community as youth. I just was so impressed to see that firsthand and meet people who had gone through that journey.
Great. Good. All right, Tanner, if you could bring the slide back up. Let's go to the next slide, please. So meaning, and the concept of the pillar we call meaning, elements of meaning are a sense of purpose in life, the idea that life is worth living. Meaning can come from an attitude towards life. It can come from a long-term vision for the future. And so our meaning-making outcomes, what it looks like when you want to see it, feel it, taste it, or touch it. Meaning makes intervention targeting individuals' beliefs, can have positive long-term impacts, including improved grades, graduation completion rates, improved communication, confidence in life's work. And we won't go through everybody right now, but how can you apply these principles to your Act Now initiatives in terms of creating meaning? And probably the most significant thing is by giving voice where people feel like they are heard in that process. Next slide, please. Well-being is, we have a sense of well-being when we feel safe to express opinions and are trusted and respected, and our contributions are valued. Achieving well-being, it's positively impacted by a sense of belonging, healthy interactions with significant adults, a sense of control, altruism, and giving back as a part of that, where you feel like you're contributing. And so some of the examples that you shared with the group illustrate what it means to give voice and be heard. That's really significant in what it is that we do and how we create this overall culture. Next slide, please. Purpose is a sense of accomplishment that comes from long-term goals. Purpose can be found in work, children, or hobby. It's completing a task that is gratifying, a relationship that inspires empathy, establishing goals that are mutually fulfilling, a relationship that allows you to become all that you can be. So I am going to ask to remove the slides for a minute, and I'm going to ask the group to think about an experience that you have had where you feel like you have found your purpose. And again, it could be in a hobby, it could be in a workplace environment, it could be at church, it could be any number of places, but where you have found that your purpose. And let me begin by using as an illustration. I'm working through a project right now. It's a personal project, but I'm gonna be writing about it. I was heavily influenced by John Kennedy. I actually met John Kennedy when I was 11 years old at a campaign stop at Truman Corners in Kansas City. And I was inspired by him ever since his assassination. I read everything he ever wrote. I read all of his speeches. I memorized his speeches. I actually paid my way through college, my first year in college, by giving Kennedy speeches in high schools. And I was struck when President Biden decided he wasn't going to run for office. He used the phrase, "and the torch has been passed to a new generation," which is a quote from Kennedy's inaugural speech. And so I've been writing and reflecting on what I did with that torch at my age and in my generation. What did we do with the torch? And in terms of the jobs or the work that we've done, the attitudes that we've carried into social change. I've been to the Kennedy Library twice now doing research, but it really has inspired once again in me what my purpose is in terms of carrying on the new torch, passing on the torch to a new generation and preparing young people for it. And so that really speaks to my purpose. So let's have a couple of examples from you in terms of where you have found your purpose and what it means to you. Anybody want to volunteer?
I will, Jim. I find my purpose and passion, those two words are synonymous for me, is working with kids. As a retired paraeducator after a long time in an elementary school, and then in my local church, I find my purpose working with kids, implanting on their hearts and minds wonderful values. That's my purpose and my passion, working with children.
Okay, good. Other thoughts?
Jim, I'll share. My purpose is helping all of you be as amazing at your thing, whatever it is, as possible. So I care about helping you get the impact that you care about. So that's what I find the most purpose in.
Okay.
I still find great purpose in preaching, but what all this other work outside of the walls of the church allows me to do is put more feet and skin on all of those sermons. And so I find purpose in preaching in one way or another throughout the entire week.
Good.
I would
Anyone
say
else?
that I think I experienced purpose when we began responding in 2015 to people in their migration journeys across Eastern Europe. I found that I experienced purpose in simply being present with people, right? Like I can't fix all of the issues. I can't stop a war. The issues are huge. I can't change those or fix those. But I experienced purpose in simply being present with people in the worst day of their life. And that has been significant for me. It changed the course. I would say it changed the course of much of my professional and ministerial focus.
Anyone else?
Yeah, I worked at a previous role. I've worked alongside a bunch of educators, elementary school teachers, who weren't in the classroom anymore. They were working for our organization. But one of them told me once that the teacher should never say anything for the students that they can say for themselves, and it really kind of stuck with me. And I guess I feel like the purpose, I think mine maybe, is to try to help elevate those voices, to give them an opportunity to speak for themselves. And I do take great pride and I guess find a great deal of purpose in trying to do that, trying to help students actually have that opportunity, because they often surprise us. Even at the elementary school level, talking about math, they surprise us, much less thinking about them talking about the community and the world that they want to live in.
I think purpose comes to us in spasms, where we see or experience something. I mean, just this morning, watching the news, I saw Malala being interviewed based on a film that she's helping to produce. And we were reminded of a video clip that she gave at the UN where she said, "One child, one teacher, one book, one pen can change the world." And it hit me. I was inspired. My purpose was rekindled, in that moment. It was kind of an existential moment that took me up to my study, and I began writing. So it's it comes to us in various ways and in waves, I would say. So, all right, back to that slide, if I could, Tanner. So as we look at what we're doing in ACT now, come to the next slide. I'm pretty sure that was the last slide. But belonging, meaning, well-being, and purpose, and making it actionable is as we articulate what it is that we're doing, as we're thinking about what we're doing in terms of youth involvement, youth engagement, and increasing their voice in the process, or whatever audience that you're working with, is that they feel that sense of belonging and that their words are being heard, and that from their experience, they can draw some meaning and feel a sense of comfort and acceptance that will kindle or refuel their purpose. I think it's going to be important that we look at this specifically. Those of you, by the way, you can end this slide. You can come off of it, Tanner. I'm going to send you, Lexi did a great job of putting together a literature review on absenteeism. And it's pretty extensive. For those of you who are looking at school-based projects, I think you're going to find it very helpful and informative. It'd be good if you familiarize yourself with those resources. Again, we're going to pilot in Schenectady and in Oklahoma City, the SBIRT project, and working with school districts in that area. But any other site that wants to begin working with a school district, I believe Nashville, what you're doing with middle school there will be another project that we can look at. But how you create in those relationships and those experiences a reason why a youngster wants to be in school. The thing that really came through strongly in the Opportunity Youth Forum in Aspen was be less concerned about absenteeism and more concerned about creating presence, is that what it means to be present in school. And what do we do to create that presence and to feel presence in our educational environments? I think we're going to have some opportunities in that space. But all these different topic areas, I was a little worried, to be honest with you, as we brought on sites. Initially, I was worried that everybody, all the communities were all doing things, and we're all doing different things. And then it really hit me as I've listened to you and have heard your voice that ACT Now is about that diversity, allowing communities, not being prescriptive, but really creating voice. There's a whole new thing in organizational development and in fundraising called trust philanthropy, where the foundations are giving more credibility to the voice of the communities they seek to support, and that those communities guide or direct the way the funding is distributed or allocated and used. And so, but it comes from listening. It comes from what is it that is going on in this community? I mean, I think before ACT Now was started and before George Floyd was murdered, we were working with a couple of cities, and Oklahoma City was one of them, on really what it means for the church to be transformational in the 21st century, actually with an initial planning grant from the Kellogg Foundation, and wanting to really look at a way for the church to reinvent itself, because for the most part, the church in America is losing significant ground and losing it fast. And so we were exploring that in Oklahoma City. We did our first Breaking Bread event with Oklahoma City on March 12th, I believe it was, 2020. And justice circle that emerged out of that, and the facilitated discussion that John and his team put together gave them input into the kinds of things they should be doing and wanted to do. And it's really been a guide for their action in their local communities. And so coming into all the sites, especially the new sites, looking at listening sessions, breaking bread events, and then collecting data so that you understand what it is that you're trying to change and what the current situation is that you can influence will be important. And it can be gun violence. Several of our communities are working specifically in gun violence is really important. And that's going to emerge and continue to be an issue in our communities. And the nexus between gun violence in schools is a critical issue. Colleen, you had a comment you want to make?
Yeah, I do. I just think we are at such an opportune moment. We are called to be in this time, in this space. Each of us has the ability in our presence in our communities to have a huge impact. And this theme of belonging, meaning, well-being, and purpose is a healing platform that kind of gets us over some of the political tensions around being too woke or being whatever, because it's everyone thrives, that everyone belongs. And in order for that to happen, that means we have to understand what contributes to why people aren't feeling like they belong, aren't doing well. And it requires us to be engaged with each other in dialogue. And so the platform the components that, make up ACT Now in terms of the listening, the dialogue, and then taking action together around addressing the compelling needs in community creates this safe place in which to have those conversations, to truly hear and listen to each other. Well, if we lift our heads up and we look at the 50,000-foot level, everything else may be getting even more scary and more chaotic going forward. Hopefully not, but the potential is there. We have the ability in the space where we are to be creating the platforms in which we can listen, hear each other, create solutions, and engage around positive things that build and strengthen individuals and communities.
Any questions or comments before we close our session?
Just sounds exciting and something I'm excited to be a part of. I think it's as I'm learning about what you're doing, it's very puts feet onto what we feel is really what our purpose is in the place where we are now, and we're just excited to be a part of it.
Good.
I just wanted to highlight on that literature review that I did, because it's topical, that one of the best ways to reduce absenteeism and to reduce or to increase presence in schools was school connectedness. So feeling like they belong to the school community, feeling like they belong to each other, that they're cared about by teachers and their peers. That was probably the single best way to keep anyone in school, and can actually mitigate problems at home in some capacity as well. Feeling like they belong in school can make up for problems at home to a certain extent. So it's really important work, what we're doing.
This is Bernice Willis. I just wanted to make a quick comment. First of all, I just want to thank the Koppels for their leadership and just creating this platform for us to share with each other. It is truly inspiring, and I think it has truly trickled down to us and on down to our mentors and every participant that's in our program and on down to our students. I just want to share that I had asked them the question if they understand what it means to be present. And I just wanted to address that because Jim had just talked about presence. And I said, I don't mean physically there. What's your perspective of being present? I asked them that on November the 4th. And that weekend, we had a getting to know you session with the mentors. And the students are so inspired and excited about participating. We are providing transportation for them. They actually walked to our location in the rain. It rained all day Saturday here in Nashville, and they walked. And I was just shocked and surprised, and then just thankful all at the same time, because they want to participate and be in this program, because they said they do want to change. So thank you.
Yeah, that's good. Well, let me close with this. Many of you have ever heard me preach or speak know that I usually close with this quote from John F. Kennedy, 1958, on the floor of the United States Senate, responding to the challenge of how youth could be involved in nuclear disarmament and create the voice for peace. He said, "The American by nature is optimistic, experimental, an inventor, and a builder who builds best when called upon to build greatly. Arouse his will to believe in himself and give him a goal to believe in, and he'll create the means to reach it. This trait of the American character is our greatest single national asset. It is time that we rescue it from the sea of fat in which it has been drowning. It is time that we get on with the business of being true to the work of a chosen people, a people who voluntarily assume the burden and the glory of advancing mankind's best hopes. We are a people who voluntarily assume that burden and that glory." Close quote. And I'm really thankful all of you are engaged in this project. And I'm excited about where this project is going and the opportunities that it holds and the impact that it's going to have upon the various people that you interact with day in and day out to make this happen. Your justice circles, your organizing committees, your groups, your foundations that you're working with. Your voice is extremely important, and probably no more important than it is now. It is critical that we have that voice. So thanks for today. Thanks for participating. And we'll be in touch. We're going to work with you on your theory of changes. I was asked that yesterday by MacArthur. Do you guys have a theory of change? Okay, we do. So be mindful of that. And QSide will be in touch. And then also Pacific Institute is going to be working with us, particularly on the SBIRT piece. And we'll be talking to you more about that. Have a good weekend.